universal patterns that really helps us better understand our own relationship with ourselves. So there are 3 universal patterns, essentially, that you can find flowing throughout all things in existence. The first is duality, right? And we kind of talked about duality a little bit in the last call, because being in the center of your circumstances is a duality. It's the center is inside of you and everything is outside of you, right? Duality is when we balance the effort and the grace in our lives, right? It's when we balance the doing and the being. Duality is when we're balancing the in and the out and the up and the down. And so everything is known through this duality. It's known through polarity, right? And so that's the first universal principle, is everything on earth has polarity. The way that, you know, the quantum field works, like charged particles. And so that's the positive and the negative. And the second is pattern, right? Everything in existence holds pattern. And so pattern belies intelligence. Anything that is patterned is highly intelligent. And so you are patterned. Your body is patterned with information. I think I said this last call, but everyone's knee fits into the armpit, and there's specific fits that are patterned in your entire body, that everyone holds the same keys and the same codes within that pattern, right? The patterns of the snowflakes, the patterns of the waves, like patterns are everywhere. And so we're going to go deep into pattern today to really understand how we can use pattern to actually disrupt patterns, which is what, if you haven't watched it, go back and listen to the Disrupting Patterns call, because it is incredible. And then the third principle is repetition, right? Everything repeats itself again and again and again. So the patterns repeat themselves, right? You go through the day and it repeats itself again and again. There's a sunrise every morning, there's a sunset every night. And so that's how we really know that we're playing with almost like organic constants in life, is when it holds these 3 things. And so today I wanted to dive deep into pattern, because pattern is one of the things that when I understood it, I couldn't unsee it. When I started to see the patterns in people's bodies, I couldn't not see it. And that's when I wrote my yoga book, right? And that's when I really started to do the yoga practice, is to understand this body as like a tuning fork for our experience. And so when we go back to like the very moment of creation, right? You can call it God consciousness, you can call it God, you can call it the divine, like that one wholeness that decided to know itself. And then the fragments of us, or the fractals of us, split off so that our souls could experience reality and individuality, right? And so we, by virtue of being split from that whole, are whole in and of ourselves, right? And so this is what we really get to learn about on this planet, is the wholeness within us. The patterns that we carry within us are mirrored, reflected, and refracted, and came from the inherent patterns of like God consciousness or source. And so when we're a soul having this human experience, at first we don't feel that, because we haven't paid attention to look, right? Because we haven't gone through time enough. And so time is really where we start to learn about patterns, right? You can never know if you behave the same way again and again in a similar circumstance until it happens again and again. And you start to see like, oh, I'm always reacting that way. There must be something going on there, right? Just like you would never know if you were a child and it's like your first spring, you would never know that that spring was going to happen again and again and again and again, until you've been through enough seasons to be like, wow, after it's dark and winter, spring comes, right? And then so it's through moving through time that we actually begin to see the patterns unfolding that are really underlying our own existence and all of existence. And so again, in all of these series, we're really understanding the relationship that we have with ourselves, because everything that is created in all of existence is all inside of us. Everything is inside of each and every one of us, and we are all whole in and of ourselves, right? But together we're also a whole community, and so we all have our little part to play within that. So one of the best ways that I perceive like myself and like my relationship with myself and how I act with myself is by understanding nature. And so why I really like to use the patterns of nature, as you probably know me, is because nature does not distort things. Like nature just is. And so when I look at creatures, when you look at like an infant, when you look at things that are not conditioned or told to think a certain way, or brought into a society that has like constructs around behavior and like specifications about like how you can be on the planet, like you get into the purity of innocence and innocent expression. And so the seed that's sprouting isn't intelligent and isn't like, oh, I just want to live and do this thing. But inside of it is inherent intelligence, right? It knows the exact moment to sprout when the conditions are right, because it's warm enough, it's wet enough, it knows that like it's made it through long enough that the cold days are over, that if it sprouts, it's not going to die. Just like how nature reproduces. If you look at nature in the wild, like a lot of nature isn't birthing children in the winter when it's cold, right? They're offspring children, they're offspring. But if you really look at where you're living, nature is birthing creatures when it's about to get warm, when there's more things for the offspring to eat. And so again, it's not that the animals are intelligent, but inside of them is wired an innate intelligence, just like inside of your body is wired an innate intelligence. And so just like we don't have to cultivate love because we are love, we have to remove the things that are keeping us from love. We have to do that same thing when we're perceiving nature, when we're perceiving pattern, is we're looking to take away that which is blocking us from seeing what is truly there, right? And so when we act in this way, we're moving with the cycles of nature. Nature is just, the earth is a big reflection of the cosmos. And so the same cycles that we have on the planet are going to be, you know, like the same cycles of seasons within the year are going to be like bigger cycles of the earth, right? And so we can see like in the whole earth, there's going to be like the spring of the earth that could be like thousands upon millions of years. The summer of the earth, again, thousands upon millions of years. And so it's really about learning how to put things into perspective. And so that's why I really like to work with the human body, because when you learn to understand like the little peculiarities that we have within ourselves, we can reflect that to nature, to like the universal cosmos, to gain insights into where we're positioned, because everything is always learning how to like use your position to your advantage, right? Is it not? Because when you're not positioned well, life is hard. But when you learn to position yourself well, you position yourself for the gold, you position yourself for the magic, you can position yourself for the perspective that allows you to see like a different way of being, right? A perspective where you're cultivating joy and tenderness instead of, you know, the rigidity and the over control of like what society wants us to be living inside of. And so we're just taking away that which truly was never ours to begin with, right? And so in nature, most of us have been around long enough. And wherever you are, there is always your spring of the year, the summer of the year, the autumn of the year, and the winter of the year, right? And so this has its own peculiarity wherever you are on the planet because of the tilt of the earth, because of the equator, because of all of these different, you know, little changes. And so my spring's not going to look like your spring, right? Everyone's spring is going to be a little bit different because we're like quite global now. But if I wanted to experience your spring, I could just hop over and do that, which is pretty magical, right? But the characteristic of spring, of wherever you are, is this characteristic of like quick growth, opening out, right? Like getting out, because spring is quick. It's like the sun is quickly changing in the sky. And depending on where you are on the planet, if you're more north, the sun is like really quickly changing, minutes and minutes and minutes and minutes. The more you get to the equator, the softer and more gentler these seasons are, the softer and gentler the changes are. And that's why like, if you're like north in Canada, like the seasons are like, spring is like, oh my God, get out, get planted, get growing. Like everything's growing in like 3 months, you know, like you have like a full plant. Whereas where I live now and it's temperate, it's like so slow. Everything's so slow because it's just a different, it's just like a different substance. And so the seasons are impacting you and how you go out into the world too. And that's why people of a community are often quite similar in their behavior, because they're being so influenced by the land without even noticing it. Again, because it's already there. There's just layers of like, I need to work 9 to 5. I need to do this every day. I need to keep my routine. I need to keep my schedules. And we're blocking ourselves from the fluidity of the pattern that is actually flowing through us. And so similar to the summer, right? The summer is the expansion. It's the opening. It's the fullness. It's the impregnation. It's the pause. Like how many of you feel just so like still and full and you just want to like lay in the sun in the summer and not do anything, right? It's the direct polarity of winter, which is the emptiness, where it's like you just want to lay in your house and not do anything. Whereas spring has that quickening out and autumn has the quickening in. And so this pattern happens again and again and again, year after year after year. And so I was just telling in my, I was doing a digital marketing call for my business incubator today. And really like, if you're going to launch a business or you're going to like start a business or you want to like drive more sales, like spring and autumn are just like the best times to do it, because people are like ready to either go out into the world or they're ready to move into their house. Whereas summer and winter, people are just a little bit more quiet. They're a little bit more internal, especially summer. It's like a quiet out, right? Everyone wants to be out and no one wants to be doing too much. And so when you understand this, you can put this into every aspect of your life to not make the wrong effort. And that's key. When we understand patterns, we learn when to make the right effort. And so I'm not going to go plant a bunch of seeds in summer because the conditions just aren't right. Like, especially here, it's really dry. Like, the sun is really intense where I live. It's like overpowering. You know, there's all of the like bugs are ready to eat it down because all the grasses are dry. And so really understanding, like, when do I actually plant my seeds? When is that quickening happening, right? When am I supposed to be pausing and waiting? And then in this way, all of your efforts are graceful because you know exactly when to make them. And so these similar patterns are found everywhere, are fractaled everywhere. And I love to use seasons of nature because it's available to everybody, right? In you as a human being, like the spring is your infancy, it's your innocence. It's when like everything is with fresh eyes. It's when you're like a child of the kingdom, which is really where we get to be when we want to be in love, right? And like in deep presence of love. And so when we're in the spring, it's like the curiosity, the openness, it's the excitement to go out. It's like every day's new, you know, everything's like a different way to like invent stuff. So a spring of a culture will be very inventive. And then in the summer of our lives, it's like our, you know, when we're working, when we're raising children, when we've like got all the millions of things, we got the garden, we got the house, we got the kids, we got the jobs, it's like overwhelming. There's so much, right? And then it flips and you move into your elder years and it's the autumn of your life, right? When everything starts to slow down, when you get to gather back inside. And then winter is the in-between, right? It's when we leave this body and we roam in the soul dimension until we find a new body to come through again in spring. And so those seasons overlaid in your life give you the awareness of really like what we're here to do. And so when we lose touch with our seasons, we have people in the autumn of their life working so hard, which doesn't make any sense, right? And so we really learn to glean the insights from what is not distorted, from what exists just because it's a part of creation. And that's what we're looking to integrate within ourselves. Because the truth is like beyond all the external validations, beyond, you know, who you like, the masks that you wear and the person that you're showing yourself to the world, there's a you that is just resting in your being. And in your being, nothing needs to get done, right? In your being, you just get to rest in your own essence. And so when you understand moving these seasons, like the seasons of your life that you're going through, as the seasons are being reflected in nature, there's going to be, so we'll do the seasons of the day, right? The spring of the day, the summer, the fullness of the day when the sun's bright in the sky, the autumn of the day when the sun's setting, and the winter of the day when you're sleeping at night. And so you start to layer these fractals or these patterns upon each other. So like if I'm in the summer of my life and right now it's the middle of the day, I'm in like the summer of the summer and it's summer. It's like so much, right? There's just so much summer energy right now. I just like want to be out there resting, but also doing and like all the things to do. And I just like want to lay down. And it would be different if I was in the autumn of my life. If I was an elder and it was summer, it would feel really good because instead of being so pulled inside of myself, there's this balance, right? Which is the duality or the polarity of like, oh, it's summer and I get to come out a little bit, right? And so as we're moving through the seasons of the year, the seasons of where we are in our life is going to be reflected differently. And this is where pattern starts to like shift. Like, yes, there's an inherent pattern in all things, which is really this reflection of the seasons on earth and in our bodies and in the bigger picture that we can't see, but we could overlay as like proof, right? Like I have the proof of the seasons of my day, of my life, of the cycles around me. Like it goes to reason that this is happening in the cosmos and the birth of the stars, of the galaxies, this rise and fall and its ever expansion out, right? And so when you can begin to really use this and understand it, you begin to move into deeper layers of like the part of your being that gets to rest in your being and then gets to ride the wave of life. And so instead of making the wrong effort and muscling it and working so hard, draining the body, getting fatigue, exhaustion, like all of these symptoms of a culture that's misaligned with the seasons, you get to move yourself back into right relationship. And in a culture that doesn't support this kind of living, it's like a radical act to be like, I actually don't feel like doing that today. And to understand the deeper layers of trying to know ourselves, we almost have to look to nature or to something that's constantly itself to understand what to do. And I wanted to tie up one thread that I had said and I stopped talking about was that even though these patterns are there, the patterns of the seasons, like no spring will ever be the same, right? Because it's an evolution. It's that ever expansion out. So even though these cycles are rising and falling, they're like cycling out and expanding out. Because this summer will not be the same as next summer. I'll have new insights. I'll be a different person with different cells in my body, and just like you will. And so even though, you know, these things are reliable, the sun rising, the sun setting, through the patterns that we're so used to and so accustomed to that we don't even notice, there's a newness in every moment that offers you the opportunity to rise in a different way to the moment, to what's expressing itself to you. And so that's why, like, you can read all the gardening books you want. This is not a gardening call, but like, this is how I always reflect it. And like, have like the right date to plant your stuff. And you've got like all your seeds and like the perfect seeds to plant in your area. And you've like got it all mapped out and you know exactly what to do because you like read all the books. If that season is cold and there's just like a different cyclical energy permeating that whole year, because every year is going to be different and it's going to have its own bigger season, right? And its own rise and fall. And if you went by the book, it's not going to turn out the way that would turn out if you're paying attention, right? If you knew like, oh, this year's a little colder, I'm going to wait, or I'm going to go to nature, I'm going to walk around, and you're not seeing any seeds sprouting. So you're like, well, I don't know if I want to plant my seeds yet. It seems like a waste. Because in that inherent intelligence of the patterns and of the relationships that are forming upon Earth, that are having a communion, right? Everything's having a communion. You will start to see that there are specific times when nature does certain things that you can also do certain things. So when the seeds are sprouting in the cement, if you're in a city, when the seeds are sprouting, right, in your garden or in the forest, like, you know, it's time to act. And if you're really paying attention and like really feeling it inside of your body and you've started to peel away these layers, you'll just know. There'll be a deep inner knowing that comes out where it will be an urge. And I get this all the time. I just get urges. I'm like, oh, I have to do this right now. And I like, without even thinking, I just like start doing it. And then I start moving through life and I start seeing things and I'm like, oh, that's why I did that. You know? And so what we're really doing in all of this work and why I wanted to do these calls, especially so you develop a deeper relationship with yourself, is we want to bring forth our intuition. And there's so many layers of like what we were told in school, what our parents told us, how they told us to think, you know, like the institutions, what they wanted us to think, what they wanted us to read, what they wanted us to believe, which may or may not be true, right? But it's become such a baseline part of our reality that it's something we don't even question. And so when we start to remove these blocks of like, do I actually want to do this? Do I want to live my life this way? Does like, do these things matter? Does like getting the house, like, you know, buying the house, like having the marriage, having the kids, like doing the white picket fence, like, does any of this even matter to me? Or is it what I was told to do? You get to really start to sift through and find who you truly want to be. And it's from taking away those layers of mistruths that are not you, that are holding you back from whatever it is that your soul is actually here to do, which is so unique for everyone. And there's no map. There's like no map of like that society could tell you is like, this is how you find it. It's by taking away all those layers and resting more within your own being that those natural urgencies, those natural intuitions, those natural excitements will come about. And that's why a really easy way to do it is to really just understand nature. And, you know, people will say like, oh, but I live in the city. Like nature is all around you. It's in the wind. It's in the wetness of the air or the dryness of the air. It's in where the sun is moving across the sky. Like you can't escape nature because nature is your nature. You can put as many buildings up as you want, but you'll see the sprouts coming through, right? And so wherever you are, you can really start to just sit inside of this, like, I'm just going to pay attention to the seasons of the day, right? Because they're always available to you. And how does the spring feel for you? Do you wake up earlier or is it hard? Because that's going to give you information about your relationship with spring and the characteristics of spring, right? How does summer feel for me? Do I get anxious? Do I get overexcited? Do I get, you know, like, what is it for you? And then you're going to understand, like, what is my relationship with summer? Because eventually what we come to realize is that everything in existence, everything that's coming to you should actually be completely neutral. Like there should be no preference. There should be no trigger. There should be no like judgment. It should just be neutral. And when acting from your soul, you just get to move in the way that feels best for you in the moment. And again, who was taught this as a child, right? And so when we're looking at these deeper patterns as one of the universal constants, what we're really, really, really wanting to do is to understand ourselves better. Because when we understand ourselves, they say like when you have a good relationship with God, with source consciousness, with self, with like your connection, your conduit to where you came from, everything else in your life will flow so easy. Because everything will be premised from overflow, from your true essence. And when we look at nature, nature doesn't take away anything. There's nothing taken away. And so this word trash that we have, no culture that was a lever culture had trash. And if you, I'll tell you a good book now that I just said that word. If you've never read Ishmael by Daniel Quinn, he completely channeled this book. Like all of his other books, I'm like, oh, these are not that good. But this book in particular is just incredible. He talks about lever culture and taker culture. Lever culture were the tribes. They were, you know, they repurposed everything. They had no word for trash. They left their environment more beautiful. If you learn about like the natives of California, like they planted everything here and they always made it more beautiful, more like fruitful because they had to. And then taker culture takes everything, has a bunch of trash, you know, it's like where we're at, you know? And so when we can move back into the true perception of how things are beyond what society has conditioned in us, nature is ever expansive. Like when the leaves fall on the ground, they don't disappear, they become compost, they become more fertility. And that's why when you like look into like the soils of the earth and you cut down and you see all these like layers and layers and layers and layers and layers, and they're just building, 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 and they're taking like cosmic space dust and the earth is like turning it into material. Like it's completely magical. And we're just like, oh, walking around. And so this is where we change our perception of like how incredible it is to be able to really truly see that the truth is expansion, is abundance, is openness, is, you know, constant overflow. And when we find that within our soul and really hone in on this connection with ourselves through seeing these patterns outside of us, we take away the lens or the distortion of scarcity and of lack and of fear. And the moment that's gone, would you show up for your job? How would you wake up in the morning? What would you do if you could just sit there and have everything you ever wanted, just like nature does? She's working, right? All the creatures are working and they're like participating and they're like just doing what they're meant to do. And everything is just an overflowing oasis. And so really it's like seeing into the depths of nature that is reflecting the cosmos, that is taking the stardust and turning it into seeds, and then trees are growing, plants are growing, nature's participating, moving things around, greater fertilities are created, right? That's how our life should be. It should just constantly be this outpouring. And it doesn't mean we're unsustainably moving through life. It means we're acting at the right time. Like nature starts to rest in the winter, and it's not like anything's being removed. It's that things are just slowly digesting in the soils. And how many of you have felt that like in those really still times of your life when, you know, you decided to work less or you're going through something and you just like take the time for yourself to heal and to relax. And I hope everyone has gotten these times, that what comes through is so much gold, because in your being and just resting in that, you're giving yourself space to actually allow life to come in. But when we're moving from a parasympathetic nervous system, from stress, which creates, I don't have enough, I'm in fear, you know, everything's scarce, I have to work so hard to get anything, we're creating more of that in our lives because we're blocking ourselves from the overflow that is inherent in nature, that is patterned into all things. And so as one of the universal constants, and as we start to see this, the third one, right, is the repetition, is that it happens again and again and again. And it doesn't mean that we can take it for advantage, right? The ancients used to like go out at every sunrise and just worship it. And that's why, like, if it's hard for you to wake up in the mornings, go outside before the sun rises and lay under the sun and get that beautiful, the blue and red light spectrums in your body and be grateful, right? And this will change your whole perception of the day, because you wake up and we miss the sunrise and we're just rushing throughout our day. We stop understanding the patterns. And when we don't understand the patterns, we think it's chaotic. It doesn't make sense. And so we can't perceive it and we can't understand it. And we always feel like we're in this like scared energy all the time. But when you truly sit back and begin to allow the patterns to reveal themselves through time, through perception, through understanding, through being patient, right? It just puts your body into so much peace, because how could you not have that same stuff inside of you when you're truly looking at that which is happening without us doing anything? you know? And so as we go back to the simplicity of the day, the simplicity of the seasons, the simplicity of the patterns that are happening again and again and again and again, that are informing you again and again and again, that even if you're not paying attention, will happen again and again and again, until one day you're like, oh, I get it, right? And then you begin to use it to your advantage. And that's the shift that it is in these practices, is it's one thing to move through life. It's another thing to start to perceive. It's a different thing completely to perceive and then to do something. Because when we start to see these patterns arising, you'll notice patterns arising in your own behavior. And then you get to decide if it's a pattern that you want to continue with. Because the pattern is of humans is to work your way to death, and then to get rigid and old, and to be opinionated, and to like be a grumpy old person, right? And to like get a hunchback, and to like get all stiff. And like there's not a lot of healthy older people in the societies, right? But when you really see that, you could say, huh, is that what I want? Right now I can start to disrupt the patterns because I'm a conscious being and I can see. And if you didn't watch the Disrupting the Patterns call, I think it's like, I don't remember, I'll link it in here which episode it is, but definitely go watch that. Because then when we start to see our own patterns that are in conflict with like the natural overflow, the innocence of nature, just expanding and abundance, we can start to disrupt those patterns through the moment we want to do something, choosing the opposite. Right? And so we really get to be the co-creators, like you're always co-creating, but like the conscious, intentional co-creator of your reality, where you get to choose exactly what you want based upon your right seeing, your filtered perceptions, that you're taking away the filters, the veils. And so the first thing is to understand the pattern, right? What is the pattern? And some people will call this like all a hologram because it's so mathematically perfect, like the way the seashells are, the Fibonacci spiral, like the Fibonacci sequence in stock market charts. Like a lot of people will say this is like a complete construct in a hologram, right? And so it is, and right, we see these like beautiful organic patterns in nature that we can begin to use and bring into our bodies, because they're always going to happen without humans being here. So we know that they don't have the same distortions that the mind can have, that the mind can hold. And like, if you know anything about the subconscious, it's not just like you and your past lives and your past timelines and this timeline and like all the deep layers that are holding you and made you become who you are, and like these reactions that are coming through you that may not be serving you, but that are just reflections of these old versions in the quantum field. The subconscious is like that which connects entire existence together. And so some people will call this Akashic records, right? But when you can get into your subconscious, this is where we start to connect into all things. And so this is where, like, when you do this work, like everyone feels it. Everyone feels it. And so my offering for you today is to really tune into patterns that you know to be true, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that you've cross-referenced again and again and again, whatever that is for you, right? It could be nature, it could be the sunrise, the sunset. Like there's these constants that are here on this earth. And really allow the significance of what they are and what they're showing you to just like mesh into your being for a little while. And when that can happen, you'll start to begin to see things differently and start to act differently and start to ask yourself, like, would I be doing this if? Or what do I truly desire right now? And just allowing the true movement of who you are to come forth. Not like you need to act on anything, but just feeling it, right? Feeling what you desire to do in the mornings, right? And so we just move back into our own pattern nature, because the truth is you're a unique snowflake that is here to have its own unique expression on this planet. You're not here to fit into the box of like what was set out for us, all of us. Right? We're here to bring forth our medicine and our own magic and our unique expression, because our little snowflake fits into like the other little snowflakes into the vast tapestry of existence. And when this happens and an oasis happens, everything is working harmoniously from being, not doing, right? From grace flowing through rather than effort pushing out. And so the whole entire thing changes. Everything changes. And just by you doing your work, it all changes. And the fits will come in. And I talk a lot about the fits in the yoga membership this month, where like you're looking to fit your body. So when you find those fits within yourself and the coherence within your cells, that's what you're attracting in outside of you. So then the right people come in where you're like, oh my God, you're my soul family. Like you go into the deep conversations that actually mean something rather than gossiping and like talking about the news. You like become vulnerable and get into the hearts and souls of people. And like, that's the childlike state that we're looking to reverse the pattern of, right? So that we stay in our longevity or in the newness, so that we don't get rigid and hard and opinionated when we get older, but we stay soft and we stay open and we stay curious. And so then we're tending more towards life, and we can transition easily into the next dimension, which is so beautiful, right? And so I think that's pretty complete. Yeah. Trying to think of a good book. Staying Healthy with the Seasons is a good book for really understanding the organs and the nature and like the Taoist perspective of more of like how to use specific things in specific seasons. But I think the best teacher is you going out into nature, you finding a walk you could do every day, walking it every single day for a year. I've walked the same walk when I'm here every single day for almost 4 years. And I learn so much every single day. And every single day it's different. And every single season it's different, even if there's the same underlying energy, right? But you truly start to understand, and things start to stream through you, right? And you'll get the insights that you need to go out your day. You'll breathe deeper, you'll feel better. And by taking this time for yourself, by taking your time for right understanding, just life flows easier. And who doesn't want that, right? Who doesn't want the like text to come in like of the exact job you want? And when you don't even have to ask anyone for it. Like, things like this happen when you're in this divine beingness of who you truly are and who you're here to be. You will get so many signs that reconfirm that again and again and again. So thank you all for being here. I'll post the replay soon so you can watch it, and definitely go after this and watch the Interrupting the Patterns again, because it's such a good call that will help you to, you know, start to take away like the false patterns that you've adopted in your own body, or the patterns that may not be serving you, so that we can be more well-rounded, more whole, and just more graceful and gracious with ourselves, for our communities. And yeah, when we do this work, we move into the giving nature, where nature is overflow. She's constantly giving from her overflowing well. So I love you all. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next Wednesday.